Hi, here we are in our week of modifiers. So what we're doing this week is we're talking about how we can modify things. That is, working from a primitive within 3ds Max. Trying to bring up the webcam. It's not coming up, so I was going to show you where my keyboard was. Since that's not active, I'm going to move it out of the way. The activity of the day that this demo is focused on is called Continue Working with Primitives and Modifiers. Create an animal using primitives and modifiers. So this is really part of quarter 2 this year. So week 6, and it's day 2. So this is a Tuesday activity. Whatever you get done today, make sure you turn in. So turn in whatever done today. If it is a comment, be sure use mark as done. Okay, so no late work on this. Let's go ahead and just go through a sample. The elephant is one of the many choices you could create, and you don't have to necessarily have a design in mind when you go to do it, but we were working earlier with boxes, and when we work with boxes, I should turn my snap off so it's not quite so extreme here. If I create a box and make sure I got enough height segments on it, that's the key to being able to modify it. I can do things like bend. So this is kind of picking up on something we did yesterday. Bend. So it might be that if you used bend and if you used taper in combination, you might be able to create something that looks like an elephant trunk. How could you combine this with other objects to make it look more like an elephant tusk or trunk? And is that perhaps not bad for an elephant trunk? Think about all the other primitives that you have besides a box. If, for example, you start out by creating, instead of doing that, maybe a cylinder would bend a little bit better for you. So if I used a cylinder instead, and again, remembering to make sure that my height segments was something decent that I could work with. Let's use 64 just as an example. And if I were to use something like, again, bend and taper by going to the modify, I'm going to actually purposely turn this into a trunk. Might as well pick on a color that looks a little bit more appropriate for an elephant's trunk, such as gray. If I go into the modify panel, let's go ahead and add something like bend it over, and a taper. Taper it. Sorry, make sure I didn't. For some reason, I missed my taper. I have taper highlighted. There we go. Work on the taper as such. I'm going to click on this purple box that says show me everything that's selected. I'm also going to maximize my viewport, and that'll help me to see a little bit better what's going on with my trunk. So that's a trunk that I put together by using a cylinder, a bend, and a taper. I don't need twist on it. So continuing this idea of building an elephant, I'm going to go back to my create panel, and I want to build a tusk. So I'm going to use another tube. I'm going to start out, if I can, a little bit smaller here. Let me see if I can create it. The tube would have been a better trunk, to be honest with you, wouldn't have been. Now that I look at it, because it's open like a trunk. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pause this demo for a minute to respond to a message in chat here. All right, so what I'm doing is this is for Tuesday when we have you guys make elephants, and I'm just trying to remember exactly what it was I did with the background here. We had a basic cylinder. Now I'm going to use what's called a tube. So I've created this tube, and I'm just going to call it trunk. Take 2. It's my second try. I'm going to go to the modify panel, and I'm going to add on the modify panel. There we go. With trunk take 2, I'm going to add a bend. And as is I increase the bend on this, and then I'm going to add them. You'll notice it's a little bit rough here. I don't have a lot of segments in the height. I can smooth it out in a minute by adding more segments. I'm going to add a taper as well. I'm working on changing the value of the taper and moving it to perhaps X only. I can also move where this position is on the taper. If I get to the gizmo here, I can actually move where it takes effect. I think I'm on the wrong angle though. I'm way over here on Y. So let me undo that change. Make sure I'm actually just moving the taper up only. It's not really having the effect I want, so let me grab the center up. I might be grabbing more than one axis here, and it's going to mess me up. Let me get to a different angle here where I can kind of keep track of what I'm doing. So this experimentation we're going through should be more or less relaxing and fun for you. There we go. Effect is on Y, primary is on Z. What if I do there? Cool. I need less of a bend here, it looks like. Back it off from 96. Back to my taper. Increase my amount. I don't do this every day, and I know you don't either. I'm going to go back to my tube for a minute because of the smoothness, and I want to indicate that if I change my height segments up a little bit here, I get a little more smoothness in my trunk. So between the two of them, if I look from the bottom, I could decide, oh, actually, for an elephant, either one of them works depending on the angle, but for some reason, tube makes a little more sense to me. And you could just proceed. For example, how would you make the bulk of a lion's head? And this is where using things like reference images might start to make sense. So what would an elephant's head look like? So I'm going to go into the window and look at modeling an elephant. 3ds Max. All right. This is Polygon Modeling, which is fine. How about if I just look at a reference image? So I've got a trunk. I want some tusks. What's the overall shape of the head? Well, we did a ball into a bicycle sphere. I think we could probably do a ball into an elephant's head. By the way, there's a difference between an Indian elephant, which has got a smaller ear, and an African elephant, which has got a larger ear. If you knew that or not. I'm allergic to both kinds, by the way. All right, I'm going to go ahead and add a sphere that I'm going to modify so that it becomes more akin to what we might expect with an elephant's head. And actually, I'm going to go to extended primitives, and I'm going to use what's called a Geosphere. I think that's where I'm going to find this. Maybe not. Maybe that's one of the regular standard primitives. Here it is, a Geosphere. Geosphere, when I create it, and if I use F4 to look at my lines on it, you can see the triangles are more clear. And I can scale this up, getting myself in the middle so I get uniform scale. I'm going to check my work from a couple different angles so you can see how I'm lining this up. I'm way off in 3D space. So now we're going to start to find that people have to attend to watching their work in more than one workspace at the same time. It's very easy to think everything's lined up if you limit your view to just one workspace. Oh, look how massive this head is compared to that. It's not good at all. So I'm going to get back into my sphere and I'm going to modify it. So with my sphere selected, which to help me out here, I'm going to turn on the Scene Explorer, grab the Geosphere and name it Head so I know what it is. If I go to the Modify panel, I can get in here and I can change the radius. Try to get a little bit more appropriately sized. I've got grid snap on, which I'm not fond of right now. Oh, that radius is huge. I'm just going to try a radius of 50, so I'm just going to come in here and type in 50. Well, how about 500? About 250. I want to turn the snap off, and I don't remember how to do it. I thought it would be right here. There's my snap. Select and link. Snap. I've got 3D snaps on. I'm just going to turn that off by clicking on that button there, which lets me move this a little bit more freeform and have more control on where I'm going. And I'm going to zoom in on this selection here by using the zoom extents to the selection and maximize my viewport. If I tumble over to the side, which is, for whatever reason is called front, I get a better view of what this looks like. Every time I change viewports, I could potentially end up getting in a wireframe view, which may or may not help me. Now, this does not look anything like an elephant right now, and that head actually looks big enough to be a body. It's okay. This is low stakes. Remember, your instructor is one of the worst artists in the world. I'm really looking for your application of the processes. Make the head just taller, maybe a little wider. And check my work from multiple viewports. Oh yeah, this is looking really, really weird right now. Low stakes or not, it looks more like a Diglett head right now than an elephant head. Alright, I can deal with that. I'm going to add this taper. I'm not happy with it. I'm going to move my taper down to the bottom below the bend and see if that helps me. I do like that better. W for move and select. Colors aside, I'm going to turn my grid off by touching G. Colors aside, this is starting to look a little bit better. Some of you are perfectionists, and that's your call. But apply the concepts and turn what you get done in a day. That was supposed to be a trunk at one point in time. This one needs to be a lot longer. So I'm going to get down to the tube. Instead of it making it only 35, I'll make it 100. Because I'm thinking that the trunk is at least twice as big as the head. And so this process is going to continue as you are amateur. Oops, that was the radius, Control Z. Get down to my height. Oh, it's 549. Let's make it bigger. Let's look at a little more elephant-like. Push it right through the back of his head. It doesn't have to be an elephant that you create, but I do want you to make your creature out of primitives using modifiers. Maybe you can turn this into a tusk. Might be salvageable if I add some length on it. Maybe change the color to white. You know, ivory is not really white, is it? I'll add a custom color here. I'll go for kind of a white, and I'll get a little bit of yellow in it. I'll add that color. That'll be a tusk for me. Again, lining things up in 3D space, you want to check your work from a couple different angles, and you might end up wanting to rotate something at a different angle, and then switch over to move. So you're going to be going between W, E, and R a few times to kind of line up your work. Do the tusks go down or do they go up? They curve up. They really come off of the head more. All right, I got some work to do here. This is going to look more like a Dr. Seuss item, I think. All right. Oh, now he looks like one of those elephants where they're trying to keep people from taking the ivory. Yeah, he does. And they kind of make sure that gotta tuck it in a little bit more. And of course, making another version of this, if I look from the top, scroll back, if I hold down the Shift key and I drag this over, I can make an instance. Now, the angle needs to be the opposite, but by making it an instance, whatever I do to one will happen to the other as well. So here's a trick on figuring out what angle it's sitting at. If you look down here, I've got my X, Y, and Z. That's because I'm in the Move tool. If I switch to my Rotate tool, which is the E key, you'll see that it originally is at -56. So what if I make this 56 instead? Instead of doing -13, what if I make this a +13? Might work. So I'm going to put this bin back to -56 again. This poor elephant. Not at all what I would want to be if I was an elephant. I'm going to look from the left side. There's a shortcut key for L, but not for R. Right. So W, E, and R to rotate stuff around. And I'm starting to make something that looks a little bit more like an elephant. I'm going to add some eyes, and to make a body, I'm actually going to take the same general shape. Using Move and Select, I'm going to hold down Shift, drag this out. I'm planning on scaling it in a minute. I'm going to make it a copy because this is going to be altogether different. I'm going to call it the body. I want to rotate this. Oh, not by that axis, so Control Z on that. There we go. No. I'm going to touch P on the keyboard to go to perspective mode. Let's see where we're at here. Maximize viewport. Maybe if I scale it first, it'll help. Get in the middle there, give myself a bigger body. Get into rotate with E. Make sure I grab the proper line there. W for move again. Line up the body. Zoom back a little bit and see what that starts to look like. Oh, this is a really weird looking elephant, I gotta say. But it's using all of the concepts we've done so far, including the scale, rotate, making copies. Remember, they're not going to be perfect from side to side. They're going to be a little bit different. That's how it is. The organic nature of things, not machine made. All right, I can deal with that. Top, left, make sure I zoom out to my whole thing. Come back into default shading, and I'll just continue to figure out how can I make some legs. I'm going to turn the grid off by touching G. And, you know, this body might actually need to be even longer. Wait. Maybe sit a little bit lower. Again, not an artist, not going to grade you on the ability of your art skills. So regularly refer to some kind of reference piece. Interesting. Body's actually bigger towards the back, more egg-shaped. I could use FFD on that as well. Or I could try to taper it. But I think I'm going to use FFD. Interesting. How paunchy an elephant can be. Now, you could do something else called Polygon Modeling. I'm not looking for realism here as much as I'm looking for people to practice the concepts we've had. I'm going to use Shift Drag on this head to pop it back here, and it's going to be a hip. So I'm going to rename this one hip. Start lower near the rear legs. And from the back side, put it off center. I'm going to hold Shift. I'm going to make a copy on this side. Now, once you've learned about the symmetry modifier that we're going to study with our box, turn the box into a jet. Let's see, I'm just going to call it hip R. I think that's the right hip. Right, so I've got to start on some hips. I've got to add some legs here. Let's add some inner hips. Does not need to be anatomically correct or artistic. I just want to see a reasonable amount of effort here. Add some cylinders. And I probably should have made one leg at a time here. If I work from the top viewport, using the middle mouse button to scroll, and here I'm going to actually change back into this kind of a view, just to kind of see the basic idea of these bounding boxes. Because under the hip somewhere I want to have a foot. So this is going to kind of give me an idea. Oh, that's not good. I'm going to delete that. Proportionately, I think an elephant's foot's about that big. I'm just going to guess. And I'm going to click off to make sure I'm adding some height. And I'm flying blind here, so I'm going to go back into default shading. Use move. Doesn't matter to me if you start on one side with one part and the other side on the other. It's fine. Look from the front here. Definitely needs to be taller. So with it selected, if I go to the Modify panel, add some height. Move it around. Go to the left. Get to the left. Touch L. I'm going to want to taper this for sure. Taper and probably flare as well. All those legs are way too long. What have you done to this elephant, Mr. Judge? So I want you to put in a reasonable amount of effort. Shift on this and make a copy of them, but before I do, I'm going to also make sure his color is more gray. We can work with materials later. From what I remember, concrete works good. Usually when I make a copy, that's when I realize, oh yeah, I forgot to name something. So there my elephant's taking shape. He's got most of the back parts. And it's all about practice, about an exercise here. I know their legs aren't necessarily symmetrical, but this will work for me. the right leg. I can make an instance because the other ones were copied. So now if I taper one of these, it should change the other front leg as well. So I get in here and type in taper, and I add a taper on this. Let's look from the front viewport and see what that is. Let's make my initial size of my cylinder smaller. So 165 or thereabouts. Really probably should have a shoulder there. Well, that's why the creator did what he did, because he knew people were just not going to be able to do these things that they try to do sometimes. You don't have to limit your number of pieces of geometry to whatever is normal. I mean, if I make this a copy and I call it neck, it's fine. Just kind of evens it out a little bit. And if I were to make get another copy of this down a little bit lower, I can even rotate that and use it as some front shoulders in effect. So, some pretty basic primitives here. I need these ears, of course, right? So for ears, all kinds of ways you can make an ear. Actually, all of this stuff, there's all kinds of ways. I'm going to lock myself on viewport, go to the create panel, and I'm going to look at my options here and see what can I use for a primitive that will work out as an ear. If I were to grab something like, a cylinder to start with, and I'm purposely going to be locked on a viewport such as back, so that when I create it, it's going to appear in front of me. Let's just turn the grid on for a minute. If I click to the grid, it should look at the top of the port. So this is going to be a sideways view, but I just want to proportion out how big my ear is going to be. And I'm going to come up just a little bit on my height. You could almost do an extrude on a letter. Let's look at it from a different angle. That looks like it's workable. And now to distort this, I'm going to do some non-uniform scaling to make the ear a little bit longer, maybe wider here. And I'm going to hit a bend on it, which is a modifier. So I can bend the ear. Change my angle to see what I'm doing here. That is not what I want to do. That's okay. I'm going to change this to Y. Oh, that looks much better all of a sudden. I'm actually pretty happy with that ear as a general shape. I just might want to go back to my cylinder and add some more sides on here to smooth it out a little bit. So I've taken a cylinder, fairly thin, done a bend on it. Remember, we've used taper. Probably didn't think that all these things were going to be as useful when you used them to make the project yesterday. Nonetheless, taper the other. Okay. Actually, let's change it from Y to Z and see if it's both too much. You taper too much, you'll end up with basically the pixels cross over, the polygons cross over. It's not a good thing. I'm going to hit F4 to see if I can see what these polygons look like. I really only have one face polygon. That's probably the problem with my cylinder. So the cap segments, instead of it being one, I'm going to move this up a little bit more. The limit here, I'm going to change the color to gray because it is, after all, part of the elephant's body. And then just using W, E, and R, I can move that into location. So I still have my bend. Also lost my taper. There we go. All right, getting back into my scene here. This object is currently named Cylinder 001. I'm going to name it Year. And I'm going to switch to the Rotate key and rotate this ear. So it's kind of work from this angle here. Check my work from a couple different angles just to make sure my alignment is doing okay. I would definitely say that I've made an African-esque elephant more so than a Indian-esque one. Here we go. So I've got simple primitives. I can continue to modify this if I want to, adding some eyes, etc. Remember, if you're going to make another one, you can make an instance of it. So I'm going to hold down Shift here, drag this ear to the other side, make sure it's an instance. That would be the ears on the left, I guess. To rotate that around, there's a couple different ways to do it. I'm just going to use the Rotate tool and just rotate it around 100. So the position and the rotation and the scaling are not changed with a modifier. Heard somebody's mic. I'm going to pause the demo for a minute. So what I'm doing is I'm recording my screen using Screencastify.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
So that when tomorrow, when students are in, I can have them look at this YouTube video, because this is really for tomorrow. So I've activated a bend here, and what I want to do is play with the angle and see where my bend is taking effect. It's doing it on both of them. It's not really doing what I want. So with a relatively brief angle, I'm just going to go for like 35%, because that usually shows you the effect. I'm going to change from Y to X. Oh, I like that better. And just checking Z. Definitely X is where I want to go, and I'm going to change my angle so they angle either back or forward. Now, from what I remember, elephants tend to angle a little bit back. And then remember the rope. Yep.
Is it okay? Since I finished.
If you've got today's activities done and you want to go, make sure you're checking the notes, and yeah, you can move on. That's fine. I'm here for you guys. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Do you mind if I watch the other videos?
Oh, you're good. You're good. I've got people, working in the lab right now. I'm just kind of getting organized so that tomorrow, when people come in, I've got something, because I usually don't keep my work from year to year, and I rebuild an elephant every year. So this is just where I'm at today.
Smart.
All right, so I decided to add another taper there, just to kind of taper the elephant ears a little bit. I do want to take another look at the elephant, because it's been a while. On the Africans, I think they actually hear from the back, and the front flap is as much a guard for the ear as well as a collector of the noise that comes up from behind. But I could be wrong. Do the elephant's ears collect the sound for the front, or do they work it from the back? For extra credit, create a war elephant and ride it to school tomorrow. Really don't know. That would be terrifying. All right, speaking of terrifying, this is something I've played around with for a bit and made an elephant out of. I guess it's an elephant. It's more an elephant than not an elephant. I guess I would say that. I think a tail would be in order, because I think elephants grab each other's tails when they're walking. So you just got to make a decision. What primitive do I want to use to make a tail? And then you can create one and then override the parameters to what you see fit. So for example, height here, I'm just going to make it 500. I'm going to give a lot of height segments, like 128, so I can bend it and twist it a little bit. Yeah, let's see if I line up this. This is just going to look all wrong, unfortunately. When you go to work with a tail on the backside of an elephant, it just never looks right. Yeah, so we're going to do a rotate here. And I want to do a bend on it, so I'm going to check that from my top viewport. How can I bend the tail so that it looks natural? Just a little bit of a bend, but not too much. Modify panel, select bend. And as I said, go about 35% or something on it. See what looks good. I probably want to taper this as well. So with the cylinder selected, I'm going to add a taper. That's the bend. Here's the taper. I'm going to zoom in on it by clicking on this selection here. I'm not sure. And this should probably be a slightly darker color gray, just because from what I remember, these guys have got a slightly, so I want to switch to a different slot here. Start out with gray, and then find a darker hue, more of a saturation. There we go. Yeah, that's okay. All right, that's an elephant. Now, when you get done creating your elephant, you're going to want to turn it in. Oh, I should have probably added some eyes. Very rough, very rough. So don't worry about it, guys. I need some shoulders up front. I'm going to use Shift, hold S, create a shoulder up front here. That's his left one. From the top. Grab the shoulder, hold down Shift to make a copy of it. So this creation reminds me of my thing about gardening, is when I find that something doesn't grow in a certain spot, I might try a different kind of plant there. And if the second plant doesn't work, that's where I put a rock. Yeah, that's what I found works best. So when you select an modifier, if you click on the word taper, it works better. So there we go. The actual cylinder might be a little bit too big back here. It is bigger than the front leg, but not necessarily that much bigger. And since these are instances side to side, it's adjusting both of them. Yep, I gave the elephant a big old butt, but that's just how it goes. All right, and then to make the eyes, one last thing I think I should have on here. I'm gonna, believe it or not, just make a copy, Shift drag. This is gonna be an eye. It's gonna be its. I'm gonna scale it down and change the color. Oh, I didn't realize how much fun I was having. I ran all the way up to the bell. If you're still with me, good job. If you're not, I get it. Make sure you're turning things in and or giving me an explanation on what's going on. Go to the left viewport here and line up this eye. Elephants tend to have big, sad eyes, I've noticed. I don't know check my work, hold down Shift, drag the eye over to the other side. So that's his left, eye left. All right, there's my elephant. Before I do a render, I might want to make a couple copies of them and put them at different angles. So to do so, I'm going to select all of the parts, and I'm going to create a group by clicking on the word group and do group. I'm going to call him the elefante. Porque elefante. I'm going to hold down Shift and drag the elephant over here, and then rotate. This is going to be an instance, so if I make any changes, it shows up. And this one's going to be, I'm going to make them do side view. And now I'm just going to switch to the rotate and show the side view. Scroll back a little bit. Grab this elephant using W. Hold down Shift and drag it over. I'm going to make this an instance. I'm going to call it Elefante Top because I'm going to show the top view. And I'm going to use the rotate key and rotate to show the top. And since these are grouped, you can move them and not worry about grabbing, less than or more than what you want. And I guess the last standard view would probably be to show a bottom maybe. So what I'm going to do is kind of arrange these in a more appropriate to showing 4 views, like so. Always going back to the original for some reason. Elefante bottom. Alrighty. Take that around using the E key. Bottom. So left and right should be about the same. Top and bottom are going to be different. Front, I should do a back. Now this prevents us from having to do a render with a movie in effect. Front day back. Take that around. And in one view, if I do a Shift Q now, my elephant as created in 4 different views. All right, I'm going to save this image so that I can actually show it as an example. Let's see. Make sure you save yours on the H drive, which is the same as your ID number. Where am I? Oh, okay. Art. 3D. Primitives. And save it here. I'll save this as a JPEG because not everything is working well along those lines. Oh, I know what I forgot. I forgot to put my name in here. Make sure you add shape, it's text, and put your name in there. I clicked twice. I'm going to undo those because I don't want to say max text in there. I can delete these 2 things. And when I go to create my text object, before I click, I'm going to change this to Fonte copyright 2020 student. Something like that. It's gray and it's going to be in a black background. I think purple might look good. And I'm just going to click to create the text. Make sure I add a modifier. Anyone? What modifier? Extrude is correct. Ding, 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 ding. And you know you can scale this any way you want so it shows up. W, E, and R are your friends. All right. I don't have a camera in here and I don't need one because I'm just going to do a Shift Q. There it is, and I can save and overwrite. There is an example. Yes, I would want to make sure that you've got your parts named. I think I got almost everything. I just didn't name this one, which I need to ungroup to get back into. But by process of elimination, I think I did okay. I mean, if people looked at it, they go, well, I see you tried to make an elephant. You know, that's all I'm looking for. It's for you to try, people. So give it a shot. Make me an elephant out of primitives with modifiers and get whatever you get done, even if it's just a head. Get it turned in, please, with views showing your production in different angles. I'm going to wrap this up for now. Thank you for your attention.